Welcome to Speaking with the Senator. I'm Senator Kevin Avard. I represent Nashua, 3 wards in Nashua, 1, 2, and 5, and the rest of District 12. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about income taxes. It seems to be one of the favorite topics of my friends on the other side of the aisle, and they kind of have a backdoor way of going about doing it. But with that, I wanted to invite one of my senator colleagues who's chair of Ways and Means, and very, very familiar with the proposals of these increases and these apparently the money that just seems to be falling from the sky with all these new projects that are being proposed. And with that introduction, I want to welcome you, Senator Lang, for coming on the show.
Kevin, thanks for having me.
I appreciate you being here.
No problem, man. It was so. Thanks for the invite. Again, I'm Senator Tim Lang. Mm-hmm. I represent District 2, which is the Lakes region, basically. I have the west side of Lake Winnipesaukee, the north side of Lake Winnipesaukee, and then all of the up in Holderness, the Squam Lakes, and Little Squam and Big Squam as well. Mm-hmm. My district runs all the way from Campton and Thornton, all the way up north, all the way down to Samberton, which is where I live, and all the way over to Guilford and over to Center Harbor.
Is Winnisquam area part of your?
Winnisquam, yep. So I have the Belmont and Laconia and Samberton part of Winnisquam. Yep. Tilton, which is also part of Winnisquam, is Senator Innes in District 7.
Yeah, I used to snorkel that entire lake, Winnisquam. You would not believe the garbage that's on the bottom of that lake. It's so pretty, and yet there's a lot of things there. But yeah, Tim, thanks for coming. I really appreciate you being here. You're on finance, you're on election law, you're did you say education as well?
No, I'm on ED&A, and I'm
right.
on the chair of Ways and Means.
Right, so you see a lot of the finances that are being proposed, a lot of the proposal on spending. And it's come before the Senate on numerous times, at least $1 billion worth of new spending. Is that correct?
Yeah, so there was just in education alone, there was over $1 billion in new spending proposed that, again, identified no revenue stream whatsoever. Just was going to be magic money that just showed up in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, the education funding one they had was a $538 million.
And how do we pay for this?
Well, that's exactly right. So that was so again, the story was I was sitting in my office, and I have a TV and I have YouTube, and I was watching the Senate education hearing, and and the person who was proposing the bill was just talking about it as if we had money in our back pocket that we could just spend. And it got me so annoyed to the point where I got up out of my office and went into the committee room and signed in to speak against the idea. Because again, as I said to the committee, this is only half a bill, right? It's telling you where to spend money, but not telling you where the money's going to come from.
Right, and we've actually had that debate on the Senate floor. How are you going to pay for it?
Right, and so I've had to table my own bills because there was spending in it, and the revenues aren't. We're doing really good with revenues right now, but we're still not going to see the surpluses we've seen in the past, the $250 million, $500 million surpluses. We're going to end up in a surplus basis this year, but it's going to allow us to pay back the rainy day fund a little faster than we anticipated from last year's shortfall. But again, it's not raining money from heaven.
Right. And, I run into constituents in the gym, and some of them say, how much is enough? There was a proposal just in Hollis about another spending thing. They have about 60 teachers and 45 administrators, and I'm thinking, is that normal?
That's a lot of administrators for that number of teachers.
But we heard on the Senate floor by one of our favorite senators that the reason we have to have all these administrators is because the state has all these unfunded mandates. I was going to come out of my skin, and I thought, no, I'm not going to entertain this. That is just such malarkey.
So, I was a prime sponsor of Senate Bill 101, the open enrollment bill.
Right.
And from the time we passed it in the Senate to the time it was finally heard in the House, it was about a 3-month gap. And in that window, I went and met with principals and superintendents, probably 40 of them in total or more. And in every single meeting, I always left the meeting saying, if there's any action, any bill that requires you to do something that makes no sense whatsoever, right, that serves no function, please reach out to me. I will put the bill in to repeal that mandate. I've yet to get a single one.
Interesting.
Not a single request saying, Tim, this is a silly thing we'd have to do and it costs us money. Can you get rid of it?
Right.
Not one of them have sent me a single request. I've got plenty of requests for more money, right? But not a single request to actually repeal something that is a mandate from the state that they have to do that serves no educational purpose.
Yeah, we have some administrators that are making more money than the governor.
Well, absolutely. I mean, so I did change a bill this year to look at, we had a Keith Murphy, Senator Murphy, put a bill in Students First Act last term. And in it was going to require that some information in an easier format was given to voters so they could understand it, right? Make it easy to digest.
Right.
So one of them was a simple graph, right? Show me the average teacher cost. And the other one was supposed to be show me the average administrator cost. But what they did on the administrator side is they aggregated the amount. So you don't know what an average is, you know what average a teacher would make, but you only know what the average aggregated administrative spend is.
Right.
So you don't know what the average administrator costs. And so you can see how much we pay our administrators compared to our teachers who are in the classroom actually doing the job, right? And I think that's important information.
It would do the
voter.
public good service to know these things so that
Exactly
they can,
right.
because
At
that
least-
really affects your property taxes.
Well, that's exactly right? So the other interesting thing is that in all these spending bills that were proposed, there's no obligation that the local property tax rate drop.
Right.
It's only state spending. So unlike in the state of New Hampshire, at the state level, I've served both. I served on a school board, a school budget committee. I've served on my town budget committee. When you do those things, the amount of spending you do goes directly to your property tax rate. In New Hampshire, at the state level, the amount of spending we do is limited by the amount of revenue that comes in.
Right.
So we don't raise, unlike a town that spends more money and your property taxes goes up, in New Hampshire, we have to manage our spending to the revenue stream that we have.
Right.
And so we don't raise taxes to meet our spending requirement.
How much money did we send back in addition this year for the schools?
So for the last, every biennium, for the last 5 bienniums, we've increased the per pupil spend, right? So every year we give more money on a per pupil basis to towns for the number of students they have. The problem is there's also a declining enrollment issue, right? And so if they're not adjusting their spending, like we may be raising it, but if we're raising the amount, but they're also losing the number of students, instead of having 100 students, they got 95 now. That's
Right.
5 students that they're not going to get revenue from, even though the 95 that they are getting revenue from, they're getting more than the year before, right? But they have to adjust their costs. It's that statement from the New Hampshire governor, right? Low spending equals low taxes. Right, and that at the local level, that is absolutely a true statement. Right, is that managing local spending at the school and at the town makes a huge difference.
So the whole phrase of downshifting really is it's look over here because we're spending. Don't look at what we're spending over here. Let's just blame it on the state. And I see this year after year after year. And I think it's really important for the public to understand that it is your local municipalities that are really responsible for a big part of your property taxes.
So most interesting, the biggest downshift cost we always hear is retirement system.
That's
the number one thing, right?
Yep.
Retirement system. The interesting thing that that downshift occurred during a Democratic governor.
Yep.
A Democratic governor agreed to, because the state budget couldn't be managed. So they agreed to shift the cost of retirement back to the municipality who hires the employees.
Right.
The state doesn't tell a town how many police officers to have or how many teachers to have or how many firefighters to have. That's a completely and utterly local decision. And that affects your local property tax rate. And so the idea that the state would be responsible for a portion of hiring of people we have no say in hiring seems kind of ridiculous to me. And so, I mean,
Right.
I know that the argument is, well, back in 1970 when the Group 2 and Group 1 were formed, you promised. I'm like, well, I'm not going to be held to a 50-year-old promise. That isn't reasonable.
right. Well, and people are I think they've had it when it comes to the cost of cost of energy, the cost of food, and now my property taxes keep going up and up and up. And it's one of those things where you got to tell them, hey, look, you got to get engaged with your local politics. It's not just the state, all right? And we did send a lot more money back to the schools. There's enrollment has been down, and yet the costs go up. You need to be asking the questions, why? Mm-hmm. It's not this, downshifting from the state. Like you said, you spoke to at least 40.
One request for a repeal of a law that costs them money.
Right.
Not a single one.
And another thing that they're blaming it on is, well, you have all this, the charter schools or the education freedom accounts and all that, and they're trying to blame it on that. But I visited a charter school in Salem. It's the music school. Mm-hmm. They actually have kids that are working for NASA on projects, which is really cool. But the average spend is $9,000 per student, and they're getting an amazing education. So where's the savings going?
So I will tell you, one of the interesting things, innovative schools, right? That's what they call themselves. Innovative charter schools are supposed to be innovative schools. And because of that, we release them some of the rules and regulations, one of which is teacher certification. So in a charter school, only 50% of people teaching have to have a certification, a teacher certification. They can hire an accountant to come and teach a math class, right? They can hire a computer engineer to come and teach a computer class, right? You don't have to be a teacher in computer science. You can just know computers, and the school board makes the charter school board makes the decision that you have the personality, you could teach, right? And so we're going to hire you, right? Whether you have a certification or not, right? So some of those things are the innovative things that are done that help bring locals into the conversation, right? Because you're hiring like an art teacher, right? It could be just the artist down the street.
It's almost like an apprenticeship.
Yeah, it's like an artist down the street. You can take that artist who can come in and teach art to the art students, right? You don't need to have an art degree to do that, right? If you're an artist and this local school board, the local charter school board decides that this person has the personality to do that, let's hire them. Maybe you don't pay them as much of a teacher because they only teach three classes a day instead of a full-time classroom, right? Those are the innovative things that can be done to make education more valuable.
And you're a technician when it comes to a lot of this type of legislation, and I know that there's technicians up there, and there's then there's me.
Come on. When it comes to energy policy, I would never challenge you, right?
No,
you and energy policy is a guy that, obviously we all have some of our wheelhouses that we're really comfortable in, right?
And with that regard, for years you've seen where we've had homeschoolers, you've had the charter schools. Homeschoolers, they decide, well, okay, back then, I remember when it all started, but the amount of savings that homeschoolers save the state in education, where does that money go?
Right.
Where does the money go that we're saving? And then we're hearing that, well, they don't have to get bused, they don't have this, they don't have all these other expenses, and you get a good amount of kids that are being taught very well up to a certain age. And then, of course, they take advantage of some of the public schools or some of the charter schools, which are public schools. But when you see the cost differential and you say, well, how come the state or the local municipalities aren't taking, where's that money going? Right. Some of it's still going to the schools, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it is. So again, we had, back before I was in the legislature, I don't know when you got in the legislature, but someone made the idea of stabilization grants to deal with the declining enrollment. So we used a 2012 census population of students, and we were paying schools up until last term when I changed the education funding formula. We were paying schools for empty seats. We went from having 210,000 students in the state to we have under 150,000 now. And yet we were still paying schools as if they had these students. So
how come the local taxpayer doesn't know this?
Well, it's not exactly in the school board's interest to say we're getting paid for empty seats. That doesn't exactly make them, why do I need your money? If you're getting paid for empty seats, you should be able to fill the seat, use the money for the seats we are filling. But again, I think that this is that conversation about voter engagement, right? Using information in a way. I joked, I had a superintendent, we were talking about a policy issue, and she said to me, Tim, it was unanimous, our town doesn't want this. And I'm like, well, hold on. I'm like, how do you know it was unanimous? She goes, well, we voted on it, it was unanimous. I'm like, well, you voted for the people in the room, right? Did you send a survey out to all the parents and ask them what they thought?
Right.
And she goes, well, no, but it was the people in the room all voted for it. And I was like, so I served on a school board. I know that when you say, if we don't get $15,000 for the football team, we're doing it with the football team. Everybody who loves football shows up, right? Every parent of every kid that plays on the football team shows up in the room and votes for the 15 grand to go to the football program. That doesn't mean the town supports it. It definitely means the people who are involved in the organization, in the sport, support it. And I think that's a lot of what happens sometimes in these annual meetings and school meetings, is where the people who are most impacted by it show up, but the average voter isn't involved at all.
Right, and so if people want to get educated, is there a link? Is there a place where they can go to find out, where their local school board? I know each town has their own websites and whatnot, but is there one on the state level where they can get
So there
educated?
isn't. I don't believe there's one that shows when every school board meets across the town and across the area. But again, I say that if you're really annoyed, run for office.
Run for office.
Run
School
for
board.
office.
Right.
School board. Run for selectmen, right? If you're really annoyed about your property taxes, don't sit in the background and complain about it. Stand up, put your time in, right? Do the work, right? To help and see. It's not as easy. This year I was on finance. It was the first time I did a state budget. It was an eye-opener about how that process works and how we manage priorities and how we spend money. It was a very interesting thing that, as a legislature for, it's my 10th year I'm in, 5 years ago, I would say, just spend it, just do it, just cut it. To me, it sounded so easy. But when you get on the ground and you're in the account numbers and you're trying to understand what every program does and what it's involved, you realize it's not as easy as it sounds, number one.
Right.
Right? But if you don't show up, you don't have a voice.
Senator Gray's doing a good job with finance, by the way. I think he's an amazing individual. I consider him the Columbo of the Senate. He's very quiet, and then it's like, oh, one more thing. But he's got a good handle on things. And Howard Pearl as well. I think he's on capital budget.
No, he's in finance with us.
He's on finance, yeah. He's also in energy, so he's a farmer. And it's nice to have people that are engaged in the community that are actually in the Senate. I talk to Howard all the time. I mean, he's my vice chair in energy, and he's got a good handle on a lot of the natural resource things. But one other thing, so you're on ED&A, which has to do with what?
Executive Departments and Administration. So basically, agency laws. So dealing with licensure is the biggest one, OPLC, the Office of Public Licensure, Professional Licensure, and managing who needs a license, who doesn't need a license, how are licenses governed, how do we deal with reciprocity from other states and licensure, all of that kind of stuff.
And also on election law?
I'm the vice chair of election law, municipal affairs as well.
So that seems to be a hot topic these days.
It is. There's a lot of conversation. So we did, in the Senate, we did CACR 12, right? Which was basically, if you don't know what, a CACR is basically, shall we put this question to the voter and let the voter decide?
Right.
Right? That's literally what you're voting on. You're not voting on the policy, right? You're voting on whether you think the state of New Hampshire's voters should be able to weigh in on this topic, on a constitutional amendment. So the amendment I put in was basically to ask the voters. My original amendment was it should require 3/5 vote of the legislature to create any new tax.
Right.
Right? It means it has to be everyone has to agree.
And that passed the Senate unanimously?
We passed it. Pretty sure it was a party line vote.
I'm pretty sure it was
16 to 8.
too. Yeah.
And then it went over to the House, and the House narrowed it, which was fine. They narrowed it to, shall we put to the voter the question of an income tax?
Right. Should
we ban an income tax in the state of New Hampshire and have that as part of our Constitution? Let's let the voters make this decision. Right, and it's still, they haven't voted on it yet. They had the public hearing and it went well. It came out of committee on a straight party line vote. The Ways and Means Committee in the House, Republicans voted yes. Let's put this to the voters. Let's deal with it. Do they want to leave this option on the table, or they want to completely take it off the table? Let the voters make this decision, because it's a political football for us.
Yep.
As you know, again, over $1 billion in new spending with no revenue stream, which will force us into, if that becomes law, forces into, now we got to raise revenue. How are we going to do it? We're going to raise or increase taxes on somebody.
And an income tax is no guarantee that your local property taxes are going to go down.
In every bill that they proposed, there was no offset for the local property taxes.
Right.
We don't control local spending.
Right.
Local spending is completely on its own, even if we choose to give more money. So I give the example of rooms and meals tax. Second largest tax we get. we give 30% of that back to municipalities. We've increased it by 104%, doubled it statewide to towns.
And did the property taxes go down anywhere?
Did anybody's property taxes go down? No.
No.
Right?
Hey, on a more serious note, why is it that the Senate always beats the House in golf?
We know the rules better.
Just kidding. Once in a while we play golf, and we have a representative in the audience, and we're just teasing him right now, but he's Representative Moffett.
Yeah.
He's cringing.
Mike and I, so Senator Roachford and I challenged Mike and Representative Spillane to a golf match, and we won.
And the nice thing about some of these, we do a few golf tournaments each year, and it's usually bipartisan. We see a number of, I think it was Senator Reardon was in one of them, and it's a nice way for us to get along, in a nice non-political setting. So
we do a charity golf tournament the first year of every term,
right?
And we raise money for a not-for-profit, a charity. So last year it was the Liberty House, which services homeless veterans.
Yep.
And so we raised a nice amount of money. Mike, how much was it?
We grossed about $12,000.
About $12,000 we raised, and we gifted it to the Liberty House to be able to support our homeless veterans, get them clothing, get them food, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for coming on the show. I know I'm getting the hook right now, so until next week, thanks for watching Speaking with the Senator. And if you like the show, please hit the subscribe button and hit a like. And if you don't like the show, hit the subscribe button and hit like. I'd appreciate it because it gives us the opportunity to have a greater reach with our algorithms, if you will. So until next week, thanks for watching Speaking with the Senator.